Oh yeah, we are. We are speaker view. That's why you're talking right now.
Okay, we're good.
We're good.
All right. Greetings, fellow audiophiles and members of the Arizona Audio Video Club. I'm Dave Yortland, and it's a great pleasure for me to be with you today to talk to a genuine audio legend, Frank Van Alstine of Audio by Van Alstine. Frank has been providing quality gear for over 50 years now. And I'm happy to say that I've owned his gear for well over 40 of those years. And whenever someone asks me for a recommendation for, hi-fi gear, I always mention that they are not going to get anywhere near the value of AVA gear by going with something else. It's just a high value for the dollar. And Frank has made it his life and his business. And uh, Frank, thank you for making time to be with us today.
Well, thank you very much for having me. The We're interviewing from my studio, which is the lower level of my home here in Woodbury, Minnesota, and I'm here to answer your questions, tell you a little bit about us and what we're doing and where we're going, and we have some new things, new ideas that are working pretty well. So whatever you throw at me, I'll try and deal with. Okay.
All right, thank you, Frank. This is going to be just a little different from most of our interviews in that I am here with Frank his home in Woodbury, Minnesota. So we'll be shifting the camera angle around a little bit as we talk. We'll be with you for approximately the next hour. We might go a little over, depending if you're interested and ask questions. And if you do have questions, please use the Zoom chat feature. Unless you're watching this on YouTube, in which case that might not work very well for you. So, that said, I'm going to start things off with a few standard type questions for Frank. As I understand it, audio wasn't your first career, Frank. What was that, and how did you decide to get into audio?
Well, my actual first career was I was a project engineer for the state of Minnesota, working in the utilities branch of the. I worked to help utilities relocate when we came along with uh, highway widening, and the poor little utility companies didn't know how to handle that. And I had to redesign power lines and things like that to clear the freeway from. But my interest in audio started way sooner than that. Back in eighth grade, an English teacher brought in. They had a week. He had a week to teach music appreciation, and he brought in his own little component audio system, a high quality turntable, a high quality little amp, and a high quality little speaker system on which he played his Beethoven and Chopin and things like that, which just knocked my socks off because I had a little Silvertone radio that's everything in one little box at home, and this was day and night better than that. And so I asked him where he got it all, and he had got it from a little radio TV shop in Rochester, Minnesota. I lived in Winona at the time, and I bugged my dad to take me over to that little radio shop in Rochester, which was 30 miles away. And it was just a little TV radio shop in the front, but as soon as you walked past the main showroom part and to the back was uh, early 1950s Radio Shack all spread out in one place, with just a Candyland full of audio stuff included. But the thing that struck me the most was he had a giant Clipsharn loudspeaker playing Les Paul and Mary Ford, and it sounded like they were right there. It was like holy shit. And actually, I was able to get over there again a couple of months later and talk to the owner, who is really nice, and says, I want to put together my own audio system. And I ended up with a little 7-watt Heathkit vacuum tube power amp that had a built-in phono and preamp section, and an Electrovoice 8-inch dual wizard speaker, along with the plans to make a small folded horn cabinet, a little garage turntable, and the shop owner says the best, that you can't do better than your source. So he did have me buy a pretty nice Grado cartridge way back then. And I saved up my newspaper money, and I got it, and I put the little amp together, and it all worked great the first time, and I had great music in my room. And that's how I got started.
And as I understand it, your folks didn't quite get the picture why your records sounded so much
that
better.
was funny, because my folks the next Christmas decided, they said, well, you know what, you don't have to have that in the room. We're going to get a good stereo. And so I came out Christmas Day, and they had a surprise for me. Look, we got a big stereo for the living room now. And I took a look. It was a brown box, maggot box from the local brown box store. Yeah. It was awful. They just never got it. Although many months later, my dad came into my room and says, Frank, can we borrow some of your records? And I says, why do you want to borrow my records? And I wasn't going to lend him my records to play on an old ceramic stylus that would have torn them apart. Well, we're having a alumni party here this next weekend, and your records sound so much better than ours. And I'd say, Dad, who is a doctorate of education, it's not the records, it's the equipment.
Mm-hmm.
And no, I can't lend you my records because you'll ruin them.
Mm-hmm. But when did you start in audio as a business then?
Well, I was up in the Twin Cities, married and working at Highway, and I guess it starts earlier than that. It's college, because I took my nice system up to
Washington, D.C.
Sorry about that. Come on. Maybe I'll stop. Sorry about that telephone. In college, I brought my system to college, and other guys in the dorm liked what we were doing, and so and they were asking us what to do, and I had made some contacts with some local audio places, Sound of the Northwest and Ken Craft, and some other local audio shops when audio was totally all local. And I would help guys build theirs. They'd try and build a kit, and they couldn't do it, and I'd have to finish it for them. And so then I was advising them, and then I started, I found Dynakit, and I built my new Dynakit stuff, and that worked really, really well. And I had other guys that bought Dynakits, and they'd start them and couldn't do them, and so I kind of got myself a little part-time business at college, finishing the Dynakits that other people had bought that they couldn't finish. And I took that kind of little bit of side income with me when I ended up as an engineer of the highway department. And I met another guy at Highway who had evidently had a parallel path, and we met and we were talking because we both were trying to sell each other our services to do audio stuff until we realized what we were doing, and we combined forces, and we said we can do this a little better than that, and I think we each said we can do a sideline business doing this, and we each put up $600, and we got a Dynacode franchise so we could get the stuff directly from the factory, and I got a deal where I could get dual turntables, and I could get some K-Lite speakers, and we just set up on our own homes, and At that time frame, Dyna preamp was like $100. Dealer cost was about 60, but everybody was selling them, and that was the kit price. Everybody was selling them for $70. There was no, so Dynaco's sold like crazy, but all the dealers hated them because there was no margin in it because everybody discounted the shit out of them. So anyway, we had a different model. We said, well, you buy a Dyna kit from us and we'll wire it free. So that we were charging the full 100 retail, but they got a wired unit instead of a kit, and they were wired beautifully. And I don't know how many of those things we built, hundreds. And that $600 was the sum total of money I ever put into this business, as far as out the capital expense.
And it became Jensen's Stereo Shop.
Yeah, that was Paul Jensen was my partner. Paul was severely afflicted with rheumatoid arthritis and died way too young from that. And I bought out his widow and ran it myself, and ran it for many years as a sideline. I'd work days at the state, come home and work evenings on our business and selling stuff. And one of the funny ones was we worked in these little cubicles like Dilbert, and so I'm in my cubicle, and the head of the right-of-way division, the chief hosho of the whole division, comes walking into our office one morning. He says, "Where's Van Alstine?" And the guy's up at the front directed him back to my cubicle, and he comes back and stands outside my cubicle and says, "I understand you've been selling hi-fi equipment around here." And everybody else in the place, including me, is going, "Oh shit," because they knew I was doing it.
Yeah.
And they said, "Okay, he's gonna get his." And I says, "Yes, sir, I do." And he says, "Well, my daughter's getting married, and I want to get her a really good hi-fi system."
Wow. Good story. Good story. Yeah.
Everybody else in the office, you could hear the silent "oh shits" from everywhere. But anyway, finally, it was a case where I could do one or the other, but not both. And I was tired of office politics and business politics and all of that backbreaking, and I just retired from highway and did it full time, and I've done it ever since.
Very successfully.
Yeah, I put a couple kids through college, bought a house, bought some nice cars, traveled around the world a lot. Had a good time. Never tried to get rich.
Yeah, I understand. Haven't you said that you were in it for the music and the fun?
Music and the fun, and and then just the contacts with nice people. And
I bet you've seen a lot of fun over the years.
oh yeah,
To keep you in it this
you
long.
bet. And I visited audiophile friends in the Bahamas and in Hong Kong and other places. And
Well, let's move on a little bit.
sure.
Frank, you've got a really interesting business model, which is, I think, a little unusual, and certainly is not the model of the big boys, the big companies. Could you tell us a little about that?
Well, I've never been about trying to get rich. I wanted to put out good equipment at a price people could afford without getting into the bullshit propaganda purple pros, and keep the prices within reason, and make a decent living at it. And it's been successful. We've done it for many years.
I'd say so.
Not a see how big we can get type of thing.
And you've got a lot of fans and adherents too.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, yeah. Of which I guess I am one. My first gear from Frank was had the tag on it for Jensen's Audios,
Yeah.
Jensen's Stereo Shop. Well, let's talk about say the current offerings. If we could talk about, I know you can talk about your product line all day long, But maybe we could just take a few minutes and talk about some of the highlights and some of the pieces. If we could get friend Joe to uh, do a little screen share with us on some of those. Joe is going to be pulling it up here, and there we go. All right,
Okay.
this is the first piece.
Okay,
And
that's our real basic. It's a chassis, an RB chassis, which stands for real basic, and it is real basic. Volume control, force selector, headphone jack, built like a tank, but nothing fancy. And in that RB chassis, we can put 4 different circuit configurations. We can put our Vision RB solid state preamp, which is a discrete transistor preamp, Class A design. That's pretty exceptional. Or our basic T10 basic vacuum tube preamp, which is also exceptional. Both of those, your choice, $8.99. They don't sound identical. They both sound great.
Joe, could you move the picture down just a tad to take in the header on it? There we go.
Yeah.
So-
Or the third choice is the SET 120 control amp. We can build a full 60 watt per channel control amp in here with passive front end, 4 inputs, headphone out, speakers out, and this amplifier got a review in the part-time audiophile recently, and he just raved and raved and raved and raved over it. You got to read the review.
I have, and it is glowing.
It's just he says his recommendation is the strongest recommendation he's ever given to anything. Yeah, it's a shocker. It's so clean. Unbelievably neutral, unbelievably detailed, transparent, deep, powerful, tight bass.
60 watts a side.
60 watts a side, doubles that into 4 ohms. And the basic designer of the audio circuits for this is here with us. His name is Dan Kiekel, and he's lurking in the back room right now. But
we're gonna tap Dan to say a few words in a bit here.
But the basic circuitry that's in this amp is our kind of unique single-ended transistor front end, which is a very simple solid state gain stage, followed by a big power MOSFET output stage. And the amazing thing about it is it scales up. So it's scale invariant. We can use that stage in a 60 watt per channel control amplifier all the way up to 600 watt bridge differential monoblocks with essentially the only difference in design is essentially parts voltage and current values, but it's just scale invariant. It works for everything.
Wonderful piece. I wish.
And if you think the little one sounds incredible, you should hear the big monos.
Well, we'll get to those. Joe, you want to put the next? Go down to the next piece.
Yeah, that's our best preamp, and that's a vacuum tube cathode wall. Okay, the Vision SLR. Yeah, that's okay. It's the best preamp chassis. That one's a full function chassis with remote volume, remote source selection, remote power on off, remote mute, some other fancy things, and we can do 2 different circuit sets in there. The caption says Vision SLR, and that's the solid state Class A solid state preamp, which works beautifully in that circuit if you need all the bells and whistles. And we can also do our high-end vacuum tube preamp, the fit valve CFR, which stands for cathode follower remote.
And we're going to get there.
Okay.
In a couple. Next one, Joe. The FET valve.
FET valve CFRB. That's our best FET valve cathode follower preamp available in the RB chassis for those that want the very best sound we can give them, but at a much lower price than with the fancy circuit set. The only difference is the box and the functions. The music is identical. So if you budget system and you want a state-of-the-art tube preamp, and remember, all of our vacuum tube preamps have separate regulated power supplies, not per channel, not per tube, but a separate regulated power supply for each plate of each tube. There is no interaction between even the plate sections of the tubes, and that gives you it just clears all the haze out. It's just pristine.
Okay. Next. FET valve
That's the FET valve
CFR.
CFR. That's the fancy chassis with the fancy remotes and the fancy thick faceplate and all of the remote control functions. And the little row of push buttons in the middle are just touch buttons, and that allows you to use all of the. If you lose the remote, you can run off everything from the faceplate as well.
Nice.
Okay, and it has some more functions that are nice, like mono stereo switching and a low gain switch used with high intent. If you have real sensitive speakers or amplifier, you can cut that knocks the gain down 6 dB. And it has a high and low filters for dealing with crappy program material.
Okay. Next, Joe.
Our
Yes,
ultra valve.
the classic.
Our ultra valve, the 35 watt per channel vacuum tube amplifier that took what Dyna started with the 70, analyzed it, found all of the circuit limitations in it, and fixed them. And then with Dan, my practical engineer, we also figured out how to provide regulated power supplies for the small signal stuff, for the voltage gain sections, so that each small signal tube has a separate regulated power supply for each plate, as we've done in the other stuff. And that just again takes all the fuzz out, and you just end up with a clear, transparent amplifier that you can't do any other way, because one big power supply, by the time you get to the actual device, they're forever interacting, and the only way to and they're interacting badly, and the only way to deal with that is to don't have any common power supplies. So we even do it in this one. Works beautifully.
It really does.
It's gorgeous out of the lamp.
The first time I heard it, I walked away thinking, gee, I wish I had a system that this would fit in.
High efficiency speakers
weren't,
and you're in business.
Yeah, which I didn't have and don't have. But I will attest that it is a beautiful sounding piece. And again, based on the classic Dynaco, but taken how many generations do you think further?
About 3 generations further. Yeah,
at least.
Some of the things we kept the same because they work really, really well. But the things that needed fixing got fixed.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's very simple. I know there's a poo-poo, but the ones who talk about other low vacuum tube amps just haven't heard an ultra valve. Because if you do, it's all over.
I believe it.
Okay.
Next. Got 1 or 2 more, well, maybe 3 amps to go here.
Yeah, we'll keep it up. DVA SCT 600. Okay, you need 2 of these. That's a 600 watt balanced differential mono solid state amplifiers. That is the best thing we do. It's a scaled up version of that little SET 120 circuit with the same basic topography, scaled way up in voltage and current and power, and they're stunning. The super wide dynamic range of depth and bass control, and it'll just make everything jump effortlessly.
All right.
And I think they're like only $24.95 each. So you get a Google powerful dual mono system for under $5,000, and you're not going to match that anywhere.
Indeed, indeed.
400R is our hybrid vacuum tube amplifier. Totally different design. Triode front end, triode power MOSFET, internal transimpedance driver stage, full complementary output power MOSFET output circuit. It's got our transimpedance amplifier was a patented design of ours, which provides high input impedance, low output impedance, high drive current, and blazing speed, and the things you can't do with the tube by itself. So the combination of the tube and the MOSFET in that loop provide kind of what we'd call a super tube, a tube with a low output impedance and high drive current, which doesn't exist by itself, but in our amp it does. And this is just a gorgeous sounding, big, very engaging amplifier with robust dynamics and robust grain, great bottom end, great definition and transparency, and it's been really, really well served. We've sold a lot of these, and they still sold, and people love them. It's just, they probably the only reason it doesn't sell better is that its base price is $26.99 instead of $9,999. It's probably not expensive enough for most people.
I owned one of the predecessors to the hybrid. Next. And the DVA
Okay,
850.
that's the hybrid version of the differential mono amp, which is the using the FET valve hybrid vacuum tube circuits and then running them in a differential bridge mode configuration, which yields even more power and high, and even it just very dynamic, very, very, it's kind of infinitely powerful.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I can't imagine what it would not drive.
And it drives them, it's just a giant block of energy.
Yeah. Okay, well, I think our next and last piece is a rather unique something called the ABX Switch Comparator. This is a most interesting product that really threw me for a loop the first time that Frank demoed it for me. And here to talk a little more about this particular product is its engineer, Dan. Welcome to our interview.
I wanted to just say that Dan is my hands-on engineer. He has done a whole bunch of good things here, like all of those SET amplifiers. And he's worked with me for a long time, and he does marvelous things. Here's Dan.
And here is something that attests to those good things. It is an amazing piece. Dan, tell us about it.
Well, okay. It's the ABX box. Basically, one of the reasons that I came up with it and wanted the design was that I kept running into situations where people would gush about how great this unit sounded, and I couldn't hear it. I couldn't tell the difference. I built this thing so I could switch back and forth and finally hear what all these people were talking about when they went on and on about the quality of this product. Well, interestingly enough, once the ABX box was built, it wasn't me who figured out what sounded so good. It was them who decided, well, maybe it doesn't really sound all that great after all.
So
what it does, it'll accept two different amplifiers, two different sources, and three different sets of speakers.
Joe, can you inch it up just a little to see the front panel? We'll lose the label, but that's okay.
You can select your source, A or B, your amplifier, A or B, and your speaker set, A, B, or C. You can select, you can set the gain, and you can define two different systems for comparison. Set whatever components you want in each of the systems. Set the gain to each system so they match, and then with a press of a button from the remote control, switch back and forth.
And virtually no signal loss or
Just hold that up.
yeah, here's the remote for it, and it's hard to believe this thing in action, because it will tell you things that you would not have believed. But by equalizing the output, you can pretty much come apples to apples in your sound. And Frank attests that this thing does not, the fact that it's got, yes, a lot of wires and components, does not audibly degrade the sound. He had a pass. Is there still a pass-through in it, Frank?
No, that was for the
That was
prototype.
just the
Yeah.
prototype.
I could
Okay.
mention that there are no capacitors in the signal path, and it's how heavy duty are the relays?
The relays are 15 amp.
So every contact is a 15 amp, very positive working relay. And and didn't mention that ahead of all of the connections for the sources, and that there's also a Y connection on for each channel that lets you bring say a tuner or CD player or DAC in and split that to run to two separate preamps. So A and B could be preamps, A and B source could be preamps, A and B could be a power amp, A speakers. And then you could have ahead of that a DAC or a tuner or a phono preamp feeding the input to the Y connectors, and then so you could have the same source going to two separate systems all the way back, speakers, amps, that, so you can scramble a whole bunch of things in there and make them work. And if you're really careful and you had two sets of identical preamps or two identical power amps, then you can figure out how you can AB speaker cables and interconnect cables and speaker wires
Wow.
and AC connectors too, if you wanted to.
Wow.
You'd find that's going to get really scary when you find that the purple prose vanishes.
Yeah. I can't imagine, I think every stereo store worth its salt should have one of these to help demo their equipment and show differences.
It brings out a lot of truth. It forces you to pick with your ears what you really think is better, or it allows you to do that. Another interesting feature that has come about from this is it allows you to set up basically two different stereo systems in your own room. And I know, like most of you audiophile guys have 2 or 3 systems. 2 of them are sitting in the closet, and one of them is set up, and every month or so you switch it around. Well, this allows you to set up 2 to 2.5 systems all the time and switch back and switch in the component you want with the push of a button. It's very useful.
It really is a great piece. And the price is
I think it's $10.99.
$10.99, 1,100 basically, and just a fascinating,
Yeah,
useful,
$10.99.
fascinating, useful piece. So, thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
And Frank, are there? You've got currently 18 products in your lineup, so we can't quite cover them all, but I think we've kind of hit the highlights. But you've got your Humbuster, did you call it? And
Humdinger.
Humdinger.
That's another dance. That's one of our best-selling things.
Really?
It's a DC blocker.
Uh-huh.
If the transformer and your amplifier, preamplifier are humming away, and you can hear it from the chassis, the cause of that most likely is low-level DC sitting on your power line. Your power line is supposed to be sitting at 0 volts, going plus 60 and minus 60. And that makes the transformer happy because it's seeing a nice symmetrical input AC signal. But if you got, say, 0.3 of a volt DC sitting on the line caused by some other appliance in your house, asymmetrical using electricity, a dimmer switch, a electric motor, and something else, rheostat, you could, instead of having plus or minus 60, you could have plus 59.7 and minus 60.3, which then would drive your transformer to not working at the center line cross of where it was designed for, and that drives transformers utterly crazy, and they will buzz.
And there it is.
Our test here, when Dan was designing the Humdinger, was we had a Dyna 120, a stock one that actually worked, but it's just a big iron transformer, and we have an electric drill here that was variable speed, and we plugged the transformer, the 120 into the chassis circuit and the electric drill into the circuit, and we'd hit the drill and the Dyna 120 would damn near leap off the table. Back. Plug the Humdinger into it, nothing, dead silent. We've sold tons of those. They usually work. They won't always work because the reason you have a noisy transformer is not guaranteed to be because you have low-level DC causing the issue. You could very well just have a noisy transformer. In that case, you got to go back and talk to the manufacturer of your equipment. But if it is DC on the line, we'll cure it, and you'll have a very, very quiet system.
Excellent.
And it's $140.
Yeah, can't beat that.
And if you don't like it, if it doesn't work, you return it.
Quite very good. Frank, when you're developing a new product, how would you characterize the relationship between engineering and listening? How great a role does each of those play when you're considering or working on a new product?
Well, with the 2 guys I work with, it kind of works this way. Either one of them will have an idea, or sometimes I'll have an idea, and I can like the you know, I was kind of asked Dan about doing a control amp out of the SCT 120, and I says, "Can we do it?" And he says, "Yes, and we can do it easy." And that was a fairly simple one. I have a I have kind of a theoretical engineer too, who's doing some new project developed for it, and uh, sometimes he has come up with totally new ideas that he cobbles up and brings over, and that, and sometimes it's for some kind of accessory, and sometimes it's for some product enhancement, and then eventually the stuff goes into the system with the ABX box hooked up, and we listen. And then if it's a major new thing, then it's a fairly long lead time, because you're talking designing circuits, designing chassis, tooling circuits, tooling chassis, lead time from distributors, engineering time to get all the metal bits right. It's not an easy process to go through, especially on a small scale, because we can't afford to make big mistakes, because they're you know, we got to get it right the first time.
Okay. Frank, you talked about a couple people, your engineers working with you. How many support staff do you have? How big is ABA?
Not very big. I got a couple of guys that build and do a really good job, and sometimes Dan even kicks into that if into overload. I've got um, a really good a personal assistant, a gal that she's got 12 kids, so she knows how to multitask, and
Huh.
although most of them are grown now, but she handles most of the paperwork and office work, and gets all you know, keeps that going really well. And then again, my hands-on engineer and my theoretical engineer, that both do a really good job, and then you know, I've got another source for mechanical engineering, chassis, and
Mhm.
that. So small, but and I pitch in and do some things myself if I need to.
Are all your products made when ordered, or do you, stock some?
Almost always. If we have a slow time, we'll try and build ahead on some things.
Hmm.
But this winter, we haven't had any slow time, because I think that with everybody kind of forced to stay home a lot more than they have, then the quality of their audio system starts becoming more important. And so, seeing as that we're a hand-on business, we're not going to ship you any virus, and you don't
Hmm.
have to come here to audition it. That it's a pretty safe transaction, especially since everybody here has been virus-free all the way along.
And that's a blessing. So, something I've noticed over the years, Frank, is that when I have occasion to call you up, you answer the phone for AVA. That's always impressed me.
I just like to do it. I like to talk to my customers. I like to interact with people. Uh, my my wife died 23 years ago, and so I've lived alone for a long time, and essentially the business and my interactions with all the people and clients pretty much is my social life, which is adequate for me. We um, we traveled. My wife and I traveled the world from the time we were married until her final illness, and so I've been, you know, we've walked Red Square and Tenement Square both in the middle of the night by ourselves, among many other places. But you know, I've got travel bug is pretty much gone. Although I did invest in a new Tesla Model 3 last year, which I love.
Aha.
Yeah,
Well,
That gets me out of the house.
New Tesla probably attests to your continuing success.
Well, it was a test of my interesting and high tech too.
Okay. A question from the membership. Do you compromise, do you think, anything in production of your equipment to keep the price low? How do you turn out basically high-end, high-fidelity gear at the prices you do? Are there cuts that you make, or what is your orientation on that?
Well, there's several things we do. For example, we're economical use of chassis, the same basic chassis. We have the preamp chassis and the big amp chassis, and then the Fed valve CFR, the fancy preamp chassis, allow us to build a variety of different products in those same chassis by using different faceplates and different back panel overlays. So that gives us an economy of scale of being able to buy chassis in a reasonable quantity, but they get used by several different products effectively. Then we are not into trying to build audio jewelry. When you get into the $20,000-$40,000 audio components that that may have been machined out of a solid block of titanium, and you need a forklift to move them. That is audio jewelry, and that does not make them a lick better musically. The music comes from really good engineering with really well designed layouts, and then using parts that are high quality, stable, and used well within their ratings, and pick for long service life, and the circuits that are designed to be very fault tolerant. And we can do that at a reasonable price. We do not use beeswax capacitors or Polish oil-filled resistors or any of that bullshit.
Don't use oiled capacitors that are cryogenically treated and then...
No, wait, cryogenically treated. In Minnesota, the winter, all of our chassis are cryogenically treated.
I believe it.
They're stored in my garage, and it's unheated, and so all of the sheet metal and all the faceplates and many of the parts are going to see 20 below zero several times during the winter. So yeah, we cryogenically treat almost everything. That we do. Now we won't make that claim in the summer.
Or in your literature, I believe.
No, we don't make that claim in the literature, but if people ask, we tell
them.
So there's a difference between audio equipment and jewelry. The problem is too many audiophiles don't know that. Okay. A Timex keeps better time than my watch. And my watch is, if you can see it, a Rolex. I know that a Timex keeps better time. But this is my only piece of jewelry. And I know it's jewelry. And the fact that it don't keep perfect time is, I don't care. It's my jewelry. But a high-end audio system is supposed to play perfect music. And you should care that it does. And if it's audio jewelry and doesn't play perfect music, you should be looking elsewhere, like for our equipment.
I'm going to try and sneak in a couple more questions here, but we are trying to save time for other member questions. But what audio-related accomplishment, is there something you can say that you're most proud of over the years?
Well, I guess the first thing was just being able to keep this business up, operating, and viable for God, pushing 60 years, and
Mhm.
still at it, and still enjoying it, and still loving it, and having so many good people and friends working with, and also have for so many long-term good wishes from customers that we still try and support and do the right thing for every day.
Mhm.
Is,
Well
okay.
said. Um, Frank, having known you, not well, but over many years, I know that you have some opinions
Oh, yeah.
about audio gear, and I was
Mhm.
wondering if you could, what's the most outstanding example of terrible engineering or audio snake oil that you have come across that, as an engineer, you think is a real scam on audio files?
Audio cables and audio interconnects and audio uh, power cords, I think, are total scams. Some are worse scam than the others. Probably the worst scam of all was the Cobra cable, which was a thick cable made of many, many, many tiny hair-like strands of wire that was in a big interwoven braid. And that type of speaker wire design trades off series inductance, which uh, if you have 100 feet of two conductor speaker wire, 12 gauge at the end of 100 feet, and you made a measurement, you might be down 2/10 of a dB at 20K, which you'd never hear. But the highly, but the interconnect cable type or speaker wire design that trades off inductance for high capacitance that's something else, because now what you're doing is just attaching a big capacitor across the output of your amplifier or preamp. And big capacitors cause preamps and amplifiers to ring and overshoot on transients. And in the worst case, they can cause full bore oscillation. The one of the Polk cable got recognized fairly early, because if you use Polk cables with a threshold big big threshold amplifier, and as soon as you turn it on, the amplifier went up in smoke. It went into full power oscillation and died instantly. And that was kind of interesting, because normally you have to use your ears to tell the difference between speaker wires, but with the Cobra cable,
Using your
you
ears
can
was.
smell the difference. But all of those
Okay.
cables, but all of the, you know, aftermarket speaker wires, that the speaker wire is a series connection with the windings in your power transformer, the primary winding. And so you got 200 feet of bell wire wound up in a little tight circle with a speaker wire terminal on each end. Okay, and that's in series with your AC power wiring in your house and the transmission line. And there ain't a bit of good sounding wire anywhere from your transformer all the way back to the substation, except your 6 feet of $1,000 speaker wire, interconnect power cable. And I'm just going to say bullshit.
Oh,
And if you put it on our ABX box and take two identical amps and connect one in with somebody's speaker wire, because people have lent me their power cables to try that with, and in the ABX box, the difference vanishes.
hmm
And of course,
interesting.
with some interconnect cables, especially poorly shielded ones, you can hear that as soon as you connect it, because you get a low level hum. Yeah.
Mhm.
Let's put it
Okay.
let's put it this way: the best expensive speaker wire interconnector cable can do is to do no harm, but many of them do harm, not no harm. And if you get a speaker wire that sharpens the high end because it's causing your amps transient response to peak, and you just paid $1,000 for it, you're going to say, "Oh, listen to all that detail," but you're not listening to detail. You're just listening to utter high frequency grunge.
Okay. Like I said, I knew Frank had opinions. So, um, let's try and move towards some uh, questions from other members. And I've got some, and maybe Joe has had some coming in on the chat feature, I believe. So we're going to start with, do you have any tips or advice for anyone regarding upgrading their hi-fi system? My power amplifier is 25 years old. Should I consider a replacement?
Depends on what brand it is and what shape it's in. There's some 25-year-old amps out there that are really, really nice. There's some 25-year-old amps out of there that are dogs. A lot of our 25-year-old amps are still running fine. Uh, maybe needs a minor repair or a switch replaced, but we got a lot of equipment that's running that's older than that. But if you've got kind of middle of the old 25-year-old equipment, you might be amazed at how much nicer one of our new pieces can be at a reasonable price. We do,
Okay.
we like to sell our new stuff, and it typically doesn't come back. We have a 30-day satisfaction guarantee on everything we sell, and returns are rare.
I'm sure. What is your stand on tubes versus solid state? Do tube amplifiers have a characteristic sound, and can amplifiers that incorporate tubes be fully accurate, or are there more musical values that should come into play here?
That's a good guess. They don't sound identical. Uh, I don't think any audio equipment is perfect. So you are very definitely entitled to like what you like best. I think we build a wonderful vacuum tube amp, the Ultra Valve, great solid state equipment and great hybrid equipment, all designed here, all designed trying to get the our design goal, by the way, is don't screw up the source. You can't do any better than to not screw up the source. So, so that's the goal here. Don't screw up the source, because the source is the best you're going to have. And we come very, very close to that goal with all three of our technologies, tube, solid state, and hybrid. They're not all exactly the same. And that means that in the final analysis that they will be received differently by different people. And I think that is just fine, as long as we can give them equipment that they're going to like. And I guess I am partial to our newest big DVA 600 solid state mono amps would be my favorites.
Mm-hmm.
For a lot of reasons, like just the power and the brute dynamics and the brute capability of never letting up or giving up on anything. It's just kind of fun. It's fun, very exciting equipment.
Okay, let's see if we can figure out what some folks have been texting in. I'm an old Dynaco. I think he means I'm an old Dynaco fan and naturally a Van Alstine fan. I still have a Super Pass 3 and owned a DH220 a few years ago. One of the complaints was that you build audio bandwidth limited to your modifications and new builds. Would you explain why you do this?
Okay.
I hope you know what he's talking about, because
Yeah, I do.
I'm not an engineer.
Okay.
Okay.
You can't build an audio design that is linear from DC to light. As you approach DC, you run out of power supply. You run out of device linearity, and the distortion goes very, very high. You know, if you were to take an amplifier and spot its distortion down to 1 hertz and you looked at its THT there, it's probably sitting at 40%. Okay, same way on the high end. At some frequency, you're going to run out of bandwidth, and you're going to exceed the slew rate capability of the circuit. You're going to start slew rate limiting, and that means again the distortion is going to go very, very high. Okay, so we kind of looked at the rule that the bandwidth of the power supply should be greater than the bandwidth of the audio circuit, so you never run out of power supply. Then the bandwidth of the audio circuit should be greater than the bandwidth that you let into the amplifier, so that no input signal can ever can drive the audio circuit into any kind of nonlinearity. And then finally, you limit the bandwidth of the audio circuit to what's rational for what a human being can hear. And actually, ours are typically much more than rational. Typically, our amplifiers 3 dB down points are in the neighborhood of 5 hertz and 60,000 hertz. And under the circumstances, and years ago I sent an amp to Audio Magazine, and I says, you can't measure the slew rate on this amp, and they says, well, that's crazy. And so the engineer, and it was one of their well-known ones back then, tried, and what he found is that as you feed in a very, very high feed signal way out of the audio band, instead of having it go into slew rate limiting, the signal just decreases amplitude all the way down to nothing. But it never did get into slew rate limiting, which is what we said. You can't measure it because it doesn't do it. And that was because we had it appropriately bandwidth limited. So that's our thought there. People say you got to go DC to light to have sound any good. That's bullshit. You can't go to DC light to light. And if you try, you're going to guarantee high distortion at the frequency extremes, period.
Okay. Well, we're going to try. We're shooting over the hour here, but Frank says that's okay, so we're going to take in at least a couple more. What is the most expensive piece of equipment you've designed and sold, taking into inflation into account?
I would have to say the DVA 850s, monos.
Mm-hmm. Probably.
Yeah.
Okay.
But they're incredible.
Frank, thanks for sharing your Saturday afternoon. Would the Vision SLR be a good match for my Pass XA250 amp and older to-noise speakers?
Yeah.
Which tube does it use?
The Vision SLR doesn't use tubes. The Vision, the Vision SLR is solid state. That's our Class A solid state design. It's a little discrete transistor, Class A, extraordinarily linear, thermally stabilized little audio circuit that is just ruler flat and ruler fast and extremely nice sounding, extremely clear, but no rough edges. We don't build equipment with rough edges. But the Vision SLR the Vision is solid state.
But if you wanted to go with tubes for an amp or a hybrid for the Pass,
you could use our FET valve CFR, which is an all tube version of that fancy chassis preamp, or a T10 RB if you want the inexpensive one. $895 for the T10 RB. Great little tube preamp.
Great. Let's see.
The answer is on speaker. Just somebody asked
This
me.
says from our esteemed president, we could really put one of these ABX units to good use. And Joe, our tech man here, says $1,100. I'll write them a check.
Yeah, tell him you can order it right on our website with about 3 clicks.
Okay. Let's see. With gain adjustment, can one level match? Does this function on the speaker selector selection as well. Very impressive device. We're talking about the ABX still, I think.
Yeah, you can adjust the gain on each side of the system. Do you want to explain a little better?
Yeah,
Dan?
that's an interesting point for the ABX box. What happens with 2 sources, 2 amps, and 3 sets of speakers, if you do all the math, you wind up with like 12 different possible combinations. Well, internally in the ABX, you can set a different volume for each one of those 12 combinations. And it remembers, and every time you switch back to it remembers the last volume that you had set for that particular combination.
Marvelous.
But you are not adjusting the volume of the speaker after the amplifier. When you're adjusting the speaker level, you're adjusting the gain, the signal to the power amplifier to match the output, so you'll get equal output on the speakers, but you're not dissipating all the amplifier power into big resistive networks after the amplifier. You're just changing the gain to the power amps.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't mind, I just was hoping I could jump in and ask a quick question about that. So if we wanted to ABC 3 speakers using this device, we could set it up so that if I played a test tone at a constant signal level, regardless of the speaker's efficiency, I could dial in each speaker so that I would get like 81 dB out of every speaker, so that it's totally equivalent when we go through the speaker selector switch. So we're really hearing the differences in the speaker and not any volume difference due to sensitivity.
That was the whole.
Fantastic. Thank you.
What's the calibrations on the box and what 1 dB steps?
0.1 dB is the calibration that you can get within 0.1 dB. And interestingly enough, as your question makes me remember, when in the original design, we tried to come up with test points and that you could hook a meter to with a sine wave so you could get exactly the right signal level so you could match that way. It very quickly became apparent that that's not the way to do it. You need to use your ears to take into account the different speaker efficiencies, and unless you had a microphone and a meter, we quickly eliminated that circuitry, and using your ears is the way to go.
That's an interesting point. I mean, in the past, when we've done these kind of evaluations, we've used a microphone and a test tone, like white noise, and we've tried to dial in so that every speaker or device, if we're testing devices, is producing the same SPL at a specific distance so that it's equivalent regardless of, I mean, that's the only way we could figure to really make it apples to apples when you're comparing 2 different devices, is the output has to be the same. If it's at, you know, a couple meters, my SPL meter is reading the same dB across each device.
Yeah, you can do that. No problem.
Okay.
Not a problem.
Well, if the club wants to think about buying one of these, I'm happy to endorse the idea, and we'll look forward to using it when I get down there.
And we've got them in stock, so we can ship immediately.
Got them in stock. What a deal. And
if somebody from the club who's interested sends me an email to Frank at avahifi.com, and asks, I can send you a PDF of the full manual. That's free.
Okay. Very good. Let's see, any other, well, we do have a lot of questions here. Ben says, I've got a pair of Polk Cobra cables that I keep around just for the curiosity. If anyone wants to see them, you're welcome. I wouldn't recommend hooking them up in your system. And after
Agreed.
After what Frank has said, I certainly wouldn't.
No, I never hook those up. Unless we've got an amp you hate.
Let's see, anything else? One fellow says, I understand about 25% of this, but it's nice to hear from AVA. I'm in about that lower 25% too. I am no engineer. I guess the other real question here we have is about your DAC. I believe it's the Mark V.
Yeah.
And the question is, does it carry on the tradition? And this better be our last question, I guess. Does it carry on the tradition of taking a stock digital design, as in the old Philips CD players that you used to modify?
The answer is no. It's a total new piece from the ground up, done by my technical engineer, and it was designed. One of the unique things about it is it will play Redbook and PCM 9624 and 13224 and DSD 64 and DSD 60 128 and DSD 256 totally interchangeably, with zero noise, zero pops, zero ticks, zero pauses. It'll just go from track to track to track instantly, quietly, and play them all. And so it's very flexible. It's got 2 coax in, digital in, 2 optical digital in, and USB in. And so it plays everything rational and is a gorgeous sounding DAC. It's again, discrete transistor, dedicated transistor line stage that for each channel. Yeah, it's gorgeous work.
Okay, we're going to have to wind up, but just quickly, what's next from AVA? What's coming? What's new?
What's coming?
Yeah. In
a new
100 words or less.
a new
whatever.
A new digital preamp that is a new super DAC built with a analog output circuit, discrete transistor built in, that again 2 optical, 2 coax, and USB M, with USB differential balanced out, that just eliminates the need for a preamp totally. You just plug your digital stuff into this and this into a pair of speakers, and hopefully it's going to be a pair of our balanced differential monitors, and you've eliminated half of the signal chain, and you're going to get phenomenal results. And it'll be in the $2,000 price range, and that's one. And then the other is a little 225 watt the SET M225, which is a 225 watt per channel balanced differential mono amplifier and a small chassis that's running here today. That's far along on the process, and those will be about $1,600 each, and that'll give you full complementary differential operation at a rational price from with 2 exquisite monoblocks that are reasonably priced, and with the same technology that's used in that new control amp that got the rave review and part-time audiophile. Actually, you can read a review of a prototype of the new M225 amp at audiocircle.com. It's posted there, and if you go to our page, it's sticky near the top of our page on there. But one of my clients, who is a very good customer and a discerning ear with a Megabec system, occasionally takes our equipment home to evaluate prototypes, and he's just done a rave review of that amp pair. So you can see that at audiocircle.com. Okay? Those are the new things.
Great. Audio Circle has a sort of a club following. It's not a club, but it's
Yeah.
Frank's site on that, and certainly Frank's AVA website is a good resource. And do check out that audio. What's the website that did the review? You just mentioned it. Audio, not
Part-time audio.
Part-time audiophile. Yes, great review of that new integrated with
Well,
the.
I could say that the absolute sound on their new buyer's guide.
Oh yeah.
Mentioning the our basic SET 120 amp and the basic Vision. No, I think I said in the T10 RB vacuum tube preamp. The reviewer said that in a little blurb there that this is the best bargain equipment he's ever heard for both pieces. Or what can I say?
And there are no less than 6 of AVA products mentioned in that absolute sound buyer's guide
Very
for 2021.
favorably. Everything from our lowest price store to some of our most expensive stuff.
So there you have it. I think we better call this a wrap.
Yeah, we just know how to build good equipment, and it isn't price dependent. We just build good equipment. We don't know how to build a stuff that isn't good. Okay. Hey,
All
great
right.
talking to y'all.
We
I
want to
enjoyed this.
thank the practical engineer here, Dan, for
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for sharing your Saturday afternoon, and of course, Frank. Really appreciate you joining us today.
This was just fun.
Well, I certainly have to agree. So I want to thank you all for joining us, and have a good rest of your day.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks very much. It was fun.
Frank, appreciate it.
Hey, thanks a lot, Frank and company.
Yeah,
That's great.
thanks a lot, Frank.
Okay, where's the button?